Hey everybody, this is Mark and Brandon with Circle of the Dark Mother. If you like our content, please click like and also subscribe. Today we're going to do a ritual room tour. My ritual room is dedicated to Lilith, and there are multiple altars. We're going to talk about all of them. As we go through them, we're going to talk about the direction, which is also the Kabbalistic direction. We will talk about the name of Lilith I use for that altar. We'll talk about what aspects, which are, there's more than just one name for that. I'll talk about where on the tree of life and the tree of shadows these spheres are located, that these aspects relate to. I will also show you all of my altars have a pentacle, a wand, a cup, and an anathema, usually also a crystal ball. Sometimes there's other things, and we'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about the extras. I do want to say that, first of all, that the Kabbalah in this is not going to be super deep. I'm just going to give some very basics. So if you don't know Kabbalah, don't feel like you're going to be overwhelmed. If you do want to know more about the aspects or Kabbalah, my book, Embodying Lilith, a Gnostic Kabbalah of Lilith, gives all of that information. So if you want to dig deeper after this, that is available on Amazon. I also want to say, too, that this is how I do altars and how I practice Kabbalah and magic. That doesn't mean you have to. It's just the way I do it. The way you do things is your way and right for you. So this should give you ideas, and it should give you maybe both ideas and also some looking at ways others do things, maybe give you some examples. But if you do it a different way and some of what I talk about doesn't resonate, then don't do it, because your practice is yours. A little note that I'm going to pause the recording between each altar so that I don't have to move the camera while you're on. I don't want to make you seasick and move this all over the place and have it jump. So I'm just going to pause the recording. So there might be a little bit of a break between, but I'll let you know that we're moving to the next one. Okay, let's get started. So this altar is the first altar we're going to talk about. This is my altar to Lilith in the East. The name of Lilith I use here is Lilith. The aspects are Lilith and Abizuth. These are the top spheres of the right pillar and the left pillar on both trees, both the tree of life and the tree of shadows. This altar, of course, has a pentacle, a wand, a cup, and an anathema, also a crystal ball. But it also has some things like a crystal skull, copy of both my books because they're dedicated to her. I also have some other items like snake skin and flowers and feathers, basically just to recognize some of her attributes and to add to this altar. So this is in the East because East is the gate of life in Kabbalah. And these aspects of Lilith are, pretty high up the tree, pretty much in almost the supernal area. So that's what this altar is in the east of my room. I'm going to pause now and we'll move to the next one. Hey, so this is my second altar. This altar is in the south. South is fiery and protective. The name that I use at this altar is Lilith, which is an ancient name of hers from Sumeria and Mesopotamia, the Mesopotamian region. The names I use, or the aspects I use here, is Lilith, Ardat Lily, Kalili, Belquis. This altar represents the bottom two spheres of the right pillar of both trees, both the tree of life and tree of shadows. The statues that you see are, very much the Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian versions. I will say, too, that I know that a couple of these statues are probably meant to be Ereshkigal or Ishtar. That's okay, because Sumerian goddesses had a lot of the same trappings as wings, the horned hat, the rod and ring of power. So whether it's meant to be one or another, they absolutely have the same iconography as how I picture Lilith. And the fact that the one where she's standing on the lions being a symbol of Ishtar, but the legs are bird legs, like Lilith is described. And the outfit is certainly more Lilith from my perspective. This altar has a pentacle, a wand, a cup, and an athame, just like all of them. The wand on this one is wood with a crystal. I will say too that I've also added some things like a skull full of alcohol. There's some oils. There's also a couple of pendants with her sigil on them. And then there's 2 eggs. The one that's made of onyx, which is like a more green color, came from the Temple of Isis from New Orleans before it was destroyed by Katrina. So this altar has a lot of different kinds of things because of how I see these aspects as different. The eggs are meant to suggest the fact that this is a mother goddess who's been around for a long time. So that's the idea of the eggs. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. I'll pause this. But as just a note, if you want to comment on any of these or ask any questions, feel free within the the comments of the video. Okay, we're on the 3rd altar now. This one is in the west, which in Kabbalah is the gate of death. It is also the most severe of the altars that I have. The name I use for Lilith at this altar is Lilith. The aspects are Lilith, Az, and Agrat Bat Malat. And if you know any of those names, they're the severe aspects of Lilith, the more demonic. I will comment on the statues. A couple of them are meant to be Lilith. One of them is a demon woman or a devil woman from Mexico. And then there's one that is not meant to be Lilith at all, but it has this kind of Lamia thing going on where there's the insect or snake body with a woman, and she's rather aggressive. And that is an aspect of Az, which is an aspect of Lilith. And then the one in the middle, if you recognize it, is from Diablo 4, and it is Lilith. Obviously, this is from a game, but it is a great statue. So I've removed, there was a demon skull in her hands. I removed it, and I've put my Lilith rosary made of skull beads and her sigil and such, and some other items around her arms. This altar still, first of all, it's the bottom 2 spheres of the right pillar. I'm sorry, the left pillar of both trees. The left pillar is severity, and that's why this is much more severe and dark. So the bottom 2 spheres of the left pillar of both trees. There is a pentacle, a wand, a cup, and an athame. The athame is actually a sickle shaped with her name in Hebrew carved on it, and that was made by a practitioner. So it's been dedicated to her even before I got it. There's also other things on this. On this altar, you'll notice that there's a few crystals. The one in the center has blood-colored markings in it. There's also a little skull with crystals growing out of it, almost like the head exploded with crystals. And then there's a couple of carnelians that look like fire. So different things on this altar, but definitely pointing more toward the dark and the severe aspects. Okay, I'm going to pause this and move to the next one. Hey, we're to the 4th altar. This is in the north, which is about magic and earthy type stuff. The name I use at this altar is Ne'amah. Ne'amah is a word that means pleasant and is definitely a figure that was incarnate based on certain things, such as possibly Noah's wife, also the sister of Tubal-Cain, and other references that are in the Bible, the Quran, and other midrash. So this covers the aspects of Ne'amah and Lilith the Younger, which is mentioned in a couple of texts, versus Lilith the Elder or just Lilith. These are the bottom 2 spheres of the central pillar of both trees. So this is very earthly and also dreams and the astral plane. This sphere or this altar does have a pentacle, a wand, a cup, and an athame. And then there's some other things, like two of the statues have consorts, because these being more earthly, they're also more about sex and love. There is one consort, which is Samael or Lucifer, and one is Ashmedai or Asmodeus, as in English. There's also a turkey feather. There is a black citrine crystal that looks like a flame. There's oils. There is also a kapala, which is a Buddhist skull cap sitting on it because of the idea of the head and such. And then I do want to call out that the wand is made of wood, two entwined snakes with a gold citrine in between the heads. The painting in the back was done by one of my friends who also did the cover for my book, Embracing Lilith. This one I think of as Neama, so that's how I use that painting. We will now pause, and I'll move over to another altar. Okay, we're on the fifth altar at this point. This one represents down as the direction. This altar I named the title of Lilim, which is a group title for all of Lilith's children. The aspects are Lilim, Lilin, which is female, and Lilu, which is male. This is the connection point between trees. So this is where the spheres connect between the tree of life and the tree of shadows. This altar does have a pentacle, wand, cup, and athame, but the statues are actually from the tradition Kimbanda. And these are Pampajira, the female ones, and Exu or Eshu, which are the male ones. And the reason I use this is because in that tradition, they actually consider Lilith and Neama as the progenitor of these beings, as their queen, their mother, and their goddess. So even though I don't practice Kimbanda, I use some of their statues and their aspects for the Lilim. And this makes sense because if they are the children of Neama or Lilith, or both, then they are their children, which is Lilim in Hebrew. You'll notice some of them have little wood things under them. I've put their panto, which is like a sigil, beneath some of them to help with the resonance to them. You'll also notice that I've put an offering on this one. I do have offerings that I give on my other altars, but this one, because they are so tied to the earth and the astral plane, I give them persistent offerings because they're more connected to physicality. Okay, next we'll move on, not to an altar, but we're going to move over to a shrine, and I'll explain what the difference is in a minute here. Hi, so we're back now with the last thing I want to cover. This is not an altar, and the reason I say it's not an altar, it does not have a pentacle, a wand, a cup, or an athame. And in the tradition I learned in, you have to have those to have a full altar. So this is considered a shrine, which means it's basically an altar with all of the ritual tools on it. It still has statues, it still has the idea of a connection. It's just, I'm not gonna, obviously there's no wand or anything to pull off of it to open a sphere, a circle, if you're using a tradition that uses that. But I do have this as part of my altar setup. And the reason is this is the direction up and inside. And those are both really important in Kabbalah. So I know in some traditions you do east, west, north, south, and that's totally cool again. In Kabbalah, you do east, west, south, north, and you also do up, down, and inside. And the reason is you create a sphere in Kabbalah instead of a circle. There's no reason that that's better or worse. It's just a different way of doing it. I imagine that in traditions that use a circle, you still imagine that it's covering everything. But we, in a Gnostic Kabbalah standpoint, do the full sphere, mostly because I think Kabbalistic stuff is more like ritual magic. And that means it's always more involved, which again is not better. In fact, sometimes it's annoying because you've got so much you have to cover. But it's the way I've learned, it's the way I do things. So the up portion of this are the two statues sort of toward the back. And the name I use here is Omaroka. And the two aspects of Lilith are Aishat Zunanim and Omaraka. So these are the top two spheres of the central pillar of both trees. The Whore of Babylon, which is the one in red and black standing on the serpent, is being used here to represent Aishat Zunanim. Aishat Zunanim is one of the spirits of prostitution in Kabbalah and in Judaism. And she's also called Kodesha. Kodesh means holy, and Kodesha indicates she's a holy prostitute. So Whore of Babylon is a really good fit for that. I don't have a Kodesha or Aishat Zunanim statue, but a really good fit. The one that is standing in for Omaroka is actually a Hecate statue. And the reason I use this is this aspect of Hecate is really a supernal, beyond creation, over all of the universe kind of figure. And that's what Omaroka is. She is sometimes called the Black Dragon of the Void. She comes in both a human appearance and a dragon appearance. She is so far beyond creation that it's real hard to even comprehend her. I do not have a perfect fit statue for her, so I'm using this Hecate statue as a stand-in. So I use this when I do the up portion of my circle or sphere. And then the one in the middle is inside. And this is meant to represent basically the enlightened consciousness within us. And so I call this one Noria. Noria is a Gnostic deity woman, basically considered an enlightened being. She's a daughter of Sophia, which is wisdom and the mother god of Gnosticism. Her name Noria in Coptic is the same as Neama in Hebrew and means pleasant. So you could almost say that this is Neama and Neama is her because it's just a different name in a different language. She appears in two of the Gnostic Gospels where she is hanging around the Ark. She is basically against the archons, which are called the spirits of this world or the rulers of this world, which are out to do their own thing and will take energy and power from humans and other beings. So she's an enlightened being. Noria also has a confrontation with Noah where he's not listening to her, and she burns the ark down and makes him start over. Great story. The other figure that can be used here, the other name or aspect, is Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene is a Gnostic figure. I mean, obviously, she's mentioned in traditional Christianity, but in Gnosticism, she is considered the divine feminine. She is an enlightened being. She is the star of all the Gnostic Gospels, where she has all the answers and basically shows up the male apostles because they're pretty stupid in a lot of the Gospels. Her name Magdalene was thought to be a town, but Magdalene, the town, didn't exist at the time that that Mary and Yeshua or Jesus would have lived. So what some scholars believe is that Magdalene was actually Magdal Eder, which means tower of the flock. And that makes sense because she's not called Mary from Magdalene. She's called Mary the Magdalene. So it does sound more like a title. And this sort of appearance would also fit for Mary Magdalene, although she's usually depicted in red and blue. But again, who cares about what other people do? I'm using this statue for Noria and a stand-in for Magdalene, and she is the inside. And that is what completes the sphere by connecting it to your heart or your enlightened center. Okay, that's it for my altars and my shrine here. There are 6 of them for the 7 directions. This one's a combination of up and down. And if you have any questions, as I said, please feel free to post in the comments of these videos. I will try to answer them as quickly as I can. And we'll be back with more content. Thank you.